Hello. Um, this should be working now. Um, uh, please send in any questions you have. And my name is Max. I run a company with Hugh Rousser. Hugh is on Instagram, but not on Facebook. So if you're looking to speak to more than one person, then Instagram is the place to be. Otherwise, it's just me. Yeah, nodding. It'd be like a weird self tape. Um, I'm being told that I can be seen and heard, which is very good news. Um, yeah, very exciting. Just trying to find out. I'm not very tech savvy, so people waving. People waving. Have I had any questions on Facebook? It's very difficult to tell. Hello, Nick. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So for those on Facebook, Hugh has just prompted me to say a little bit about who we are. So we're Bitter Pill, and we've done plays at the King's Head over the last few years. We did Big Brother Blitzkrieg in 2016. That did 2 runs, one for 3 weeks and one for 4 later in the year. And then last year we did Stripped. And it was Stripped was our most recent play there, and it was a play about a man who goes to receive a life drawing with an artist, and it was written by Hugh, and it's about the fact that they had a troubled history, and it was sort of, I guess you could say, a response to Me Too in some ways. Also a rip-roaring ride. And I guess as a company, what we're always looking to do is to try and make work that feels as though it's sort of underpinned by something serious and sort of compelling and sort of related to the world that we live in, is kind of primarily entertaining, because we want to make stuff which isn't boring. And who knows, sometimes we might succeed. Yeah. Yeah. Hugh's saying that's a great mantra for the benefit of Facebook people, who seem to be. I'm worried that if I click on something, Hugh, that that it will just go wrong. But I don't know. Would you? So, right, yeah, I feel like a very old human being using Instagram for the first time, and I coincidentally am basically using Instagram for the first time. Thank you, Nick. Do we know Nick? Just a kind person. Great. Yeah. So what are we working on at the moment? At the moment, Bitter Pill have just launched a initiative called the Painkiller Project, and the idea of the Painkiller Project is that while theatres are closed, and while we can afford to do so, we're fundraising to make sure we can do that as much as possible. we're taking submissions every fortnight for plays that the next week get turned into podcast audio plays. And yeah, it's sort of a way we think of sort of recreating something which feels a bit like theatre, even if it's not. And it's a way of for the benefit of people on Facebook, Hugh's saying it was the idea that it's something which feels cyclical and collaborative, a bit like. Okay, so great. Hugh's telling me not to pander to him. Okay, no. So someone called Pamela said, "Nice to see your home. It is my home. It is where I live in the eves." And I'm trying to think, Hugh, what could we talk about that would be handy? I guess maybe a good starting point would be how we kind of got into theatre. What did we do to... Singing. I was an actor and a singer. Yeah. So I guess, and I guess when we formed at university, and I've got a question on Facebook as well from Shadi saying, when did we form and how did we meet? So we obviously, Hugh's just explained, we met at university and we started trying to produce work there. And I think that in terms of taking that step from being a company that was sort of formed out of a student town and then taking stuff a little bit to Edinburgh, it can feel like a really sort of small step in some ways and a big step in other ways to doing stuff at venues like the King's Head. And I guess the way that we sort of learned was we did a play where I think we really weren't on top of how to produce it at the Tristan Bates, and we got very little press in, and it was for a fairly short run. And I think that um, the thing that we sort of learned by the time we got to the King's Head, and the King's Head is brilliant for kind of helping support companies in the early stages as they're trying to learn how to market their work, was sort of figuring out what kind of audience we were playing to and what the angle for our show was. So we had a show about Hitler and the Big Brother house, and it was really about trying to make it seem as sort of not frivolous, and it's a silly concept, so you don't want people to think it's just going to be completely inane. And so the King's Head sort of helped us put together a marketing campaign that that would work and attract audiences, and that's all about being really meticulous about who you think the people are who will be interested in coming to see your show and why they'd be interested in coming to see your show. But I guess the main piece of advice that I'd give on that front is that we were worried about doing the show at the King's Head in the first place in 2016 because unlike a lot of other fringe venues, the King's Head um, was part of the Equity Fringe Agreement, and that meant that suddenly all of the costs and overheads involved were much higher, and so it felt like a much bigger risk. Um, but in the end, I think that the really important thing that the King's Head kind of instilled was that if you treat yourself professionally as a professional, if you take the work seriously, and if people are being paid, then actually it sort of elevates the work because it makes it feel less like a sort of student production on stilts, and more like something that exists in the same world.
That challenge of like, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it right, and you're going to pay your actors properly, and it's going to be a professional production. So they give you that support, but then you're also sort of challenged, and the bar is raised. And I think we definitely, with Big Brother Blitzkrieg, by the end of that, we were really glad that we'd had that challenge, because I think, you treat your cast with that kind of, well, you treat them like professional actors, you pay them, and it does improve the quality, it improves the commitment, it makes everyone feel like they're part of something bigger. And so, yeah, that was what made working at the King's Head that first time a significant step forward for us. That was one of the big things, I think. Yeah.
Hugh, I think I've worked out a rather ingenious way of including you on the Facebook, and not just have me nodding to silence, which is I unplug the earphones, and then you speak into the computer as well. I think we've got a system. Yeah, I think that that was one of the really terrific things that King's Head kind of made us feel, and gave us confidence to make work in that way. Yeah, I don't know. I think in terms of other points about how the young company we've tried to grow and try to sort of learn. I guess that's the key thing, is it's a hugely risky world out there for a young company putting work on in venues in London, and I think that the thing which is so important is that you've got to have your eyes open, and not have delusions about how successful your shows can be. And again, something that King's Head is really good at, and this, with our second show, Stripped, that we did at the King's Head, we kind of put together a pretty sort of different arrangement where we played over 3 weekends, and that was because it was a show that we felt confident about, and we felt that there was an audience for it, but we wanted to test the water a bit with it, and kind of learn more about the play as we went along. It sort of had less of a period of development compared to Big Brother Blitzkrieg, and so performing during the weekends and then having the week to kind of learn how the play worked and build on that felt like a really good, responsible way of working and making something better. And that came about through a discussion with the King's Head about what was the best vehicle for the show.
We had any questions on Facebook, Matt?
Nothing on Facebook at the moment. Anything on here? Anything on the Instagram accounts? How have we been coping? during lockdown, and do we feel that this is an opportunity to make work? I guess the answer to that is,
well, I suppose, Max. So I don't think we've sort of properly explained this, but so Max is sort of, when it comes to working together, Max tends to direct and I tend to write. And so in terms of how we're finding sort of creative outlets at the moment, I don't know, a lot of people have been saying, I don't know what other writers have been finding, but I think speaking to a lot of people, they sort of say, oh, you must be sort of, you must be having so much more time to write at the moment, and you must be getting loads of work done. That must be great. And yeah, it's, on the one hand, you do have a lot more time, but on the other hand, I think with a lot of people, it's, I suppose, when you can't see friends and you can't see family, and your life doesn't have sort of just the same thing every day. Everyone's sort of finding that quite difficult, and I don't know if that is maybe the best kind of environment for thinking creatively. And so, yeah, so I mean, I have projects going on, and I have things that I'm working on, but yeah, I mean, collaboration is kind of how we always work, and so not being able to do that, or being able to do it electronically, is frustrating. Max, you're doing a little bit of directing with the Painkiller project.
yeah, and we did our first Zoom rehearsal last week, which was actually good fun, and it's sort of, I guess if the point of a rehearsal is to discover something about a play, and the discovery makes it better in some way or makes it feel more exciting, then that kind of sort of thing is still possible. So I think I'd advise people to do things like workshop their plays over Zoom, and yeah, stress test what they've got, because you can do that. I think that obviously nothing can replace being in a room with actors and figuring something out in that way. And there's sort of, as we're discovering right now, a huge amount of pressure to fill the space when you're speaking over video technology. But I think that the basic principle that you can hear something and decide whether it works still stands. I think the thing which I found, and it'd be interesting to hear what you have to say on this, Hugh, but the thing I found interesting and challenging about now and what the future holds is an idea that might have seemed like a good idea pre totemic event can suddenly seem fairly irrelevant afterwards, and working out what is going to feel relevant in 2 months, 2 days time, let alone a year's time, is weird.
About how people talk about films around, the early noughties. Everyone sort of suddenly films, especially American films. People just kept using the phrase, "This is a post 9/11 film," or "in the post 9/11 world," and it's like, suddenly that becomes like a touchstone on which everything is sort of related. And I think it's similar now. Like, January I was working on something which I was feeling was quite relevant, topical, and I'm very curious to see. I'm still working on it now, and I'm curious to see, sort of come September or come the end of the year, whether it still has that feeling of topicality, or whether, with the virus and everything that's changed, whether that's gone. And then also, like, how do you, I think we've seen with the submissions to the podcast, there are lots of people are sort of trying to kind of talk about the virus, the lockdown, and the kind of emotions that come with that. And it's really interesting seeing people tackle that in different ways. And there have been I mean, what you worry is that there's going to be an influx of just the same story or the same ideas, but actually there have been a few that have been like really original takes, and you think, okay, so there is going to be loads of like interesting stories coming out of this. By the way, Layla's asked, I don't know if you've seen this, but Layla's asked, would love to hear more about how you're creating podcasts out of submissions at the moment. What's the process like in lockdown? It's actually like incredibly enjoyable. I mean, obviously, but because I was saying before, like in lockdown, that ability to collaborate and that ability to work with others is hindered. But reading so many of these submissions and writing notes on them and then giving feedback, then you're kind of engaging with that back and forth with people. You're engaging with that. You're taking people's ideas and you're trying to sort of work out sort of what's good about them, what really works about them. Like you're looking at the originality and you're trying to give constructive feedback. And I think like a lot of people, a lot of creators, that kind of conversation is really engaging and stimulating. And so that's, definitely kind of helped to fill that kind of gap. Yesterday we had a sort of Zoom conversation with script meeting, basically, for the sort of 10-15 scripts which we'd kind of whittled down from the submissions. And I really enjoyed that. Just talking with other creators and sort of agreeing, disagreeing about things we liked and didn't like, etc. So that has been great. And then Max, obviously the turnaround from, we select the scripts on Sunday sort of afternoon, and then it's a week, and then it's a week on Monday when the podcast gets released. And so like we've done that once now, and how is that process from your end?
Yeah, I guess the way I think about it is I remember a theatre director once describing a theatre production like it's like an unstoppable train, and you decide you're going to do it, and it seems like it's ages away, and it just starts to come closer, and the deadlines get closer and closer, and the things that you're trying to achieve get harder and harder to see being possible to happen. And it's a little bit like that, really, because we're trying to make a short play this week in 1 week. So having picked a winning play yesterday, we're now trying to assemble the cast. So speaking to agents and trying to very sort of gently nudge people to make decisions quickly, and then hopefully by the end of the week rehearse the play in order to then put it out by next Monday. So that sense of deadlines is sort of I can only describe stressful in a good way. I don't know. That seems to work for me.
At least there's no illusion, like when you normally decide to do a show, there's no illusion that you've got a lot of time. There's no sense of it being months away and that you've got sort of a long time to plan. You've just got to get on with it and do it. And,
Another question, which is Bitter Pill produces theatre that aims to tell personal stories against the backdrop of nation-changing events and global pandemics.
What?
Global events. Sorry, no. I misread the question. Nation-changing and global events.
Pandemics. That's a very neat goal. We always have to be against the backdrop of a global pandemic.
We're the theatre company that's been waiting for we're the only theatre company that's been waiting for a global pandemic.
This is our moment, but all the theatres are closed. The irony, it's awful.
We're ready. The idea was.
What was the question?
The question is, will we be tackling the pandemic at some point? What do you think? Do you think it's a good idea? I mean, I'd say that even the play that we did last week, which has been released as a podcast through the Painkiller project, that play by Alison Carr, it's about a woman's bath falling through the floor into the next door neighbour's home, and while on the surface it's kind of just surreal, um, uh, and playful scene in which it seems to have no ostensible connection to the events of the global pandemic. It's sort of there. It's kind of bubbling away under the surface. It's been written by Alison, who's um, working and living on her own at the moment, and so the sort of the sense of being locked down and being solitary has kind of affected the work. And I guess that's the way that we feel probably most interested in it, in tackling it.
Yeah, but it's always the thing when you approach topical issues like this. Obviously, it's great if you're able to sort of deliberately hone in on one topic like the pandemic. But we've done with Stripped and Big Brother Blitzkrieg. We those two plays ended up being really topical. Big Brother Blitzkrieg is about Hitler in the Big Brother house, and it just happened that it was the two times it was on were in 2016, the first half of 2016, when Donald Trump's presidential bid was going from being like a laughing stock to a reality, and then Strip, that started out as just idea. The image I found activating with that was just that a man modelling nude for a female artist, and that just seemed a really striking image. And obviously, I was aware there would be interesting kind of political conversations to have there, and the whole idea of vulnerability and perspective, and observing someone. But in the way that each of those projects developed, they became more topical as we went on. Stripped became more and more about consent, the more this sort of plot strand about this party that had happened 8 years ago, and how these two people we thought were strangers have actually met before. So it sort of suddenly became more and more topical. It became more and more about consent and sort of living in a post-Me Too world and taking responsibility for your behaviour. And likewise with Big Brother Blitzkrieg, we didn't know that. Obviously, no one knew what was going to happen with Donald Trump, and when you came up with the idea, it was sort of before Donald Trump had even had even put his name forward for the presidency, and so you have two plays there that actually ended up being really topical, but they didn't come from like an intention to be topical. They came from just an interest in these ideas. And so I suppose with the pandemic, it would be amazing if we found a way, or if a project we worked on kind of like grew into that space.
Yeah.
And kind of organically started taking on those, some of the ideas around the pandemic. But I'd almost be wary of trying to be too deliberate with it.
Well, I guess something that I've been thinking about a bit is the idea that I looked at the plays when the pandemic sort of started to hit the fan. I looked at the plays which had come out in the wake of the Spanish influenza and World War II. And the big plays of the years after that tended to be written by people like Somerset Maugham, and they were sort of social comedies, and they kind of had nothing to do with either the war or the influenza on any explicit level. And I think that we live at the moment at a time where people, particularly in our industry, where there's a desire to be quite literal and to reflect the world that we live in. But actually, there are other ways of thinking about it and embracing the sort of the metaphorical impact of this stuff might be a less boring way to tackle it, because I don't think I'm going to, when theatres reopen, I don't think I'm going to want to go and see a play that contains the minutiae of a Zoom call or a live blog like this, because it's going to feel too much like the
Yeah, you never know what people are going to want to hear. Like,
yeah.
Maggie O'Farrell's new book Hamlet, which is about the Shakespeare family during the time of the plague, has just come out. And I work in a bookshop, and I suppose talking to people about this, you know, it's just some people saying, oh, you know, I don't want to sort of read about the plague. Other people saying, oh, that's so topical. You know, what interesting time. Yeah, you never know what people are going to want to.
So I think in answer to the question of are we going to make work that tackle the pandemic, I don't know, but I think that I think that it won't be a good idea to make that much work which looks at this particular period of time that we're living through anytime soon, because I think it's just not going to be what people want. I think people are going to want to laugh a lot, and that's, I think, the thing that we will be attempting to do. I think that whatever work we make, we aim to entertain people, but we also aim to make people laugh, and I think that if we can do that, then that's probably a better thing to do than to try and make things that kind of act as museum pieces for this era. But yeah, that's I think that's us done.
People do that.
Yes, yeah. Each of their own. Each of their own. I look forward to watching.
The same thing is when Brexit happened, like seeing the reactions with creatives and theatre and novels, with sort of how people responded to that, and there were some like brilliant takes.
But also some clangers, and I think that maybe a good example of a play that dealt with Brexit really well, which could have not been about Brexit. It was just about Brexit because that's what people saw in it. Was Albion, just down the road from King's Head at the Almeida, because that sort of was about someone looking to recapture something from their past in a garden. But you know, that's a very human story that could have applied to anyone from any period, really.
I suppose if you look at what that did so well, is it took the emotions of Brexit and then sort of removed all the actual specifics about Brexit and then just made a story around those emotions. And so if you look at what that would mean for the pandemic, you know, frustration, confusion, loneliness, that sense of community, I'm sure there'll be people who sort of engage with that and come up with something fascinating.
We're basically done now.